From Will Charlton.
As politicians and political commentators, would you say what would you say to those who may feel disillusioned with the current political system?
And you know well, I mean, anybody watching this programme and listening to the audiences know that there is a great disillusion with everybody involved in politics. So as politicians and political commentators, what would you say to people who feel disillusioned? Owen Jones, you kick off.
I'm very passionate about this. I think there's a huge disconnect with politics and ordinary people in this country. I think that's partly because politics has increasingly been treated not as a duty, not as a service, but as a profession, where you increasingly get politicians who've never had a job outside the Westminster bubble, where you get a situation where, if you look at the background of MPs, they're increasingly not drawn from a working-class background. Actually, Caroline's actually an exception, really, if you look at MPs, because over two-thirds of MPs are now from professional, middle-class backgrounds. I think this has a consequence because it means MPs can't relate to people and their everyday issues. I'll give you one example, and I don't often quote Hazel Blairs, I'll be honest with you, but I interviewed Hazel Blairs before the last election. I said, Hazel, 5 million people stuck on social housing waiting lists in this country. Why didn't Labour do anything about it? She said, to her credit, very candidly, there just wasn't anyone in government who was interested in housing. But if you had people who'd been stuck in a social housing waiting list, or someone in their community or in their family, and you got those people into Parliament, those issues would be far more likely to be addressed.
How do you get them into Parliament?
Well, traditionally the route was trade unions and local government, because what they did is they trained up working-class people, they gave them a political education, and those routes have been attacked. But as well as that, I beg people, and I really want to emphasise this point, politics is not just the soap opera at the top. It's not about Parliament. When we look at all the things we won throughout history, whether it be women's rights, LGBT rights, workers' rights, it wasn't won because of the goodwill and generosity of those above. It's because ordinary people, our ancestors, our mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers, they got out there, often faceless, airbrushed out of history, ignored. They got out there and they fought and they made their voice heard. And we stand as a country on the shoulders of giants. We owe all of our gains, all of our rights to those people. So don't just let politicians be the one, if you like, who pass all these laws. We just passively stop. Get out there, be organised and make your voice heard. That is a proud tradition in this country.
So you're going to stand for Parliament then?
No, I'm not going to stand for Parliament. And I actually want people...
You're not going to take
I want
your own
people
medicine.
outside the Westminster bubble. I want actual people like people here to stand and put themselves forward. I don't think they're careerists for doing so. They're not.
Peter Hitchens, those who feel disillusioned with the current political system, what would you say?
Are right to do so. They have been systematically betrayed, and I see no end to it. There are so many issues which have been visited on this country by an elite of self-selecting, closed-minded people, as well represented here this evening, and actually largely incompetent as well, which have done enormous damage to our way of life. So, for instance, who now has anything to say about the deindustrialisation of this country and the destruction of manufacturing jobs under the Thatcher government? Who can reverse it? Who can do anything about it? Who will say anything on this panel about the catastrophe of mass immigration, which has changed this country irrevocably into somewhere completely different from what it was? They won't talk about it. They won't talk seriously about the immense problems of crime and disorder, which affect millions of people in their homes and leave them utterly vulnerable to all kinds of unpleasantness and violence and menace, which they never used to have to undergo. And there is no sense whatsoever that there will be any reform of the criminal justice system or any attempt to put it right again. These are just some of the subjects
on which
this elite just constantly refuse to discuss.
Why?
Why? Because they themselves have an ideology. They themselves have the ideology of metropolitan bourgeois bohemians. They despise most people outside.
What are you, man of the people?
They despise. Well,
I mean, you're the only person on this panel.
I'm no more a man of the people than you are.
I don't claim to be, but you're making a pitch for one here.
I'm simply saying these are the things which they will not do anything about, which they will not do, because they themselves benefit. They themselves benefit from many of the things which do immense damage. They've benefited from globalisation. They've benefited from mass immigration.
We'll talk about mass immigration. Let's talk about immigrants coming over here, propping up our NHS, treating us when we're ill.
They're not affected. Their children don't go to bog standard comprehensive then they're not affected. They're not affected by. They're not affected. They're not affected by crime. Yes, I do know how I'm talking about because I know what they do all the time. They will not discuss these things. They will not do anything about them. They ignore what you say, and you think that at general election time you can do something about it. No, the people who stand before you at general election time for the political parties are people who've been pre-selected. You have no control. If I stood for Parliament, or if he stood for Parliament, from our positions, which are quite popular, the fact is the party machines would erase us. The immense amounts of money they're capable of spending, the enormous access they have to the broadcasting organisations, which we don't have most of the time, would make it impossible.
You've got more access than I have,
would make it impossible, on the contrary, would make it impossible for anyone outside
Peter, sorry, the question was, what would you say to people who feel like you clearly do about the current political association?
Said it.
Well, no, wait a moment. What would you say to them about how to change things? Are you going to stand as an MP?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to stand as an MP?
No, because for the reasons I've just explained, I wouldn't have the faintest chance. No, my advice to anybody young enough to do so is to emigrate before it's too late.
Oh, for goodness' sake! I mean, this is just
the paper that hates Britain. You heard it here.
This is a ridiculous council of despair. I think our country's best days are ahead of us, not behind us. And I think Peter Hitchens needs to get with the programme. I got involved in politics, actually, through my mum, who was a member of the CND and used to take me on CND marches. Oh, wow. And I thought this is interesting, exciting. It was the 1980s. There was a big debate about ideas. And I think that, you know, if you want to be involved in politics, you can be involved in politics. And I want more people to be involved in politics. I think we should make Parliament more open, more easier to access, more friendly to people from different backgrounds. I think it is becoming quite an elite of a particular type of professional. I think that's a problem. We need to think about the way it operates, the terms and conditions, all those kind of things. I'm excited by the primaries that we've done in the Conservative Party to get a wider group of people involved in politics. We need to revive local... No, we've got some new ones coming up, actually, David. Maybe question time might be involved. But what we need to do is we need to open up politics. We need to make local government count through localism so that people are involved. But this idea that everything is always awful, that's one of the reasons why people turn off politics, because they just hear this constant moaning.
The Daily Mail might call you the man who hates Britain, after what you just said.
Exactly.
Anybody, the Ed Miliband of our day.
Feel free to call me.
I mean, it's not the Ed, the Rafe Miliband.
It's not Britain I hate, Britain I love, every field and hedgerow. It's the people who run it.
Or the people who live here.
And who are wrecking it. And so, like anybody who cares about his country, I'm distressed by it. I see no hope from these interchangeable people. She was a Liberal Democrat. For all I know, she still is.
Let's hear from
the Conservative Party. I know I was, but I'm not anymore. You are a Liberal Democrat.
The person in the second row there. That's you, sir. Yes.
Hi, I'm 19, and so I haven't had the chance to vote yet. I missed the last general election, and unfortunately missed the Welsh referendum as well. And I guess, going back to the disenchantment point, I guess I hate to use the argument that they're all the same, or that they're all liars, but I feel as though, coming from a Labour background myself, I feel as though there is really no difference in itself. They've become, I'd hate to say it, but a centre-right party. I wish there was a new party on the left, but I feel as though they would never stand a chance with this private party of three big groups.
All right.
And I wish someone would address that.
OK, and the person behind you in the yellow shirt, and then I come to you over here on the right side. Yes.
One point of view is that the trade unions represent the common people, the common man. Wouldn't it be a good idea if the trade unions put forward their elected people to represent
I rather thought that's what they're accused of doing, but I don't know. The man on the right, yeah.
Yes.
You said no vote to the man on your left, yes.
One of the ways in which we measure political disillusion is by analysing voter turnout at elections. This has been very low in recent times.
Yes.
Perhaps we could do something practical about it by having elections on Sundays instead of Thursdays, as they do in some other European countries.
I'm not sure that would change the view of politicians, would it?
People don't.
More people would vote. No, hang on.
People don't vote because they don't like what's being offered to them.
Tim, you're going. We've got a couple of minutes. Tim Farron.
I mean, just before I answer the question, we've just got to get away from this nonsense that is peddled by Peter and people like him, that immigration is some kind of curse in this country. It is a blessing. It has made... And if you just want to look at the hard fact, it is worth £7 billion a year to our economy, never mind anything else. But are people disillusioned with politics, and they should they be? I mean, people are disillusioned with it, and I'm often myself sometimes, if I'm honest with you. I joined the Liberals when I was 16. I joined Shelter first. I watched Cathy come home, and it made me cry. That's how I got involved in politics, because something got me in my gut. People do vote, but they don't join political parties anymore. And I saw around me in the 1980s, a bit further north than here, half the parents of the kids in my class, including sometimes my own, out of work and out of hope and despairing, and the waste of those lives. And I thought, well, I can either sit back and let that happen, or I can get involved and I can try and do something about it. And I joined the Liberals not as a career move. I'd have been flipping stupid if I had. It was not exactly a glittering route to a future in politics.
We're talking about people's view of you, not your view of yourself.
What I'm saying...
We've heard a lot about you, but what about people's view of you?
All I'm saying is, for everybody else, don't get involved in politics because you want to become a Member of Parliament. Right. That's not why I got involved in it. I just thought the world is a grim place, or it's grimmer than it could be, and we can make a difference, and you'll make certain that people like Peter are proved right if you don't get involved in politics.
You're part of the problem, because the Liberal Democrats inspired, to their credit, hundreds of thousands of people for the last election, and then they betrayed them on every single pledge. And those people will never trust a politician ever again because of what you did.
No. Not peace, but silence. Silence. Caroline Flint.
I think there's lots of examples where we have let ourselves down as politicians, and you therefore can't blame people for being cynical about what they've seen. But, you know, when I joined the Labour Party at FE College, it was because there was a Labour club at the Further Education College. I'd never met an MP in my life, and I joined because I wanted to change things. I looked at my own family, and I felt as passionately then as I do now that your chance in life shouldn't be determined by the family you come from and the wealth that you have. Everybody has a chance to succeed, and that's why I joined the Labour Party. But I also accept, after many years now in politics, that we shouldn't become complacent about how we operate. And for me, one of the most enjoyable parts of being a Member of Parliament is living in Doncaster and going down on the train to the House of Commons on a Monday, coming back on a Thursday night, and being where my constituents are and doing the best I can for them.
Yeah.
For me, that is about the connection. You said about the political system. We have a system here where, because of the constituency link, you can actually see what the laws in Westminster do to the lives of people in our
constituency. So if everybody was like you,
important.
if everyone was like you, nobody would be disillusioned.
No, I'm not saying that. I think it's a positive part of what MPs do, and long should that continue. Everybody
will be disillusioned with question time. We've got so many hands up, and I've been told I've got to stop. Very quickly. You have to be very, very quick.
Thank you. I just want to say that I am one of the thousands that is very disillusioned. I've always voted Liberal. Exactly, Owen. I did feel completely betrayed after the last election. I did selfishly want to live through a coalition, but I had hoped it would be with Labour, not with the Tory party. I don't know where I would vote exactly now. All I know is I wouldn't vote for the Tories with the wreck that you are making of our education system.
Well, anyway, that's dishing it out all round. Our time's up, I'm afraid.